The South African Federation of Trade Unions held its second National Executive Committee meeting on the 21st to the 23rd of August 2017 at the Vincent Mabuyakhulu Conference Center, Newtown, Johannesburg. The NEC conducted a comprehensive discussion on the state of the trade union movement in our country. We affirmed our view that the workers' movement has been fundamentally weakened and fragmented. As a result, workers remain with no independent voice of representation. This underlines the need to form SAFTU 4 months ago to fill this void. The NEC is happy of the work underway to launch SAFTU structures across the length and breadth of our country. We are on track to launch the provincial structures by the first week of December this year, and in addition, we've adopted a comprehensive program to respond to the immediate organizational challenges facing SAFTU and her affiliates. This program will see us building capacity of the unions with a focus on unions that are organizing the most marginalized workers in the country, such as security, cleaning, transport, hotel, retail, catering, farming, and so forth. The recruitment campaign will be intensified to ensure that we reach our ambitious target to recruit 300,000 workers by December 2017. We are happy that more unions are expressing an interest to join the Federation, and in particular the NEC warmly welcomed the decision of SASAU to abandon the sinking ship and to join the family of independent democratic campaigning unions. We will be approaching more unions, including federations like SAFTU, to join the efforts of uniting workers as part of our effort to give voice to the voiceless 76% of workers who are not members of unions. Moreover, as they were part of this project from the onset, it was agreed that we must take up a campaign to ensure the historic victory at the Labour Appeals Court scored by NUMSA and others that strengthen the law that oblige workers or that oblige employers to make permanent workers who have been employed as temporary for more than 3 months, as we intensify our call for the complete ban of the labor brokers. We will organize teams of recruiters in every town to walk in the streets of Johannesburg and other towns, industrial areas, shopping malls, and so forth, with SAFTU regalia enforcing that judgment in every shop, in every workplace, searching for the organized and unorganized workplaces, and also construction sites, farms, call centers, private learning establishments, and so forth. The bosses have appealed the Constitutional Court, or the bosses have appealed to the Constitutional Court against the Labour Court judgment, as status quo remain in force, but a strong legal interpretation of what now constitutes the status quo under the Labour Relations Act is available to us, and we must act on it. The meeting emphasized that the NEC resolution, based on the invaluable inputs from all affiliates, will remain absolutely nothing if they are not backed by strong political and organizational support between the meetings of the NEC. Rhetoric does not build organization, but a commitment to practically change and address workers' challenges does. The NEC analyzed the political and socio-economic situation which is worsening, and noted that hardly a day passes without new shocking revelations that confirm that a new low has been reached in South African democracy. Millions Millions of workers and their families and the working class communities live on nothing but poverty, wages, or insufficient social grants, and in many cases would not survive if not for the generosity of family and friends to keep them alive. Our people have yet to see the future promised in the Freedom Charter of a South Africa which belongs to all who live in it, black and white, and where the national wealth of our country, the heritage of all South Africans, shall be restored to the people as a whole. The job losses bloodbath continues, although the official rate of unemployment remains at an already shocking level of 27.7%, the more realistic expanded figure is up to 36.6%. One of the highest levels of unemployment in the world. And there was a net quarterly decrease of 48,000 employees between December 2016 and March 2017. These numbers, however, do not reflect the human misery that allows the loss of an income for those 48,000 wage earners. Given estimates that every wage earner supports as many dependents, it means that over 500,000 more people now face dire poverty. And a report by UNISA and Momentum estimates that the number of those unemployed could increase by a further million by 2018, and the figure could easily soar past the 1 million mark. And the jobs that remain are becoming more precarious as the employers intensify their offensive to weaken unions, wreck collective bargaining, and outsource or casualize more jobs. The Confederation of the Associations in the Private Employment Sector, representing labor brokers, scandalously encouraging its members to ignore the key judgment of the Labor Appeals Court in the case which NUMSA won in the Labor Appeal Court, which ruled that the precarious workers must be able to access protections enacted to their benefit in the amendment to the Labor Relations Act. We have agreed to produce documents on policies including what the fourth industrial revolution could mean to workers. The capitalist system is in search for new ways to make profits, is preparing to make driverless cars, drones, and could go to the shop, or drones that could go to the shop and go with goods to the customer's home address, supermarkets without tellers, garages without attendants, robots, and so forth. Millions of jobs will be lost across the globe. We will find ourselves managing Section 189 permanently until there is hardly anything left to defend. South Africa, with its dysfunctional education system, will make this even worse. Even as the NEC meeting was sitting, Start South Africa reported that poverty has risen in the country since 2015. The latest poverty trends in South Africa report shows that the poverty headcount has increased to 55.5%, up from a series of 53.2% in 2011. The national minimum wage discussion has laid bare the levels of starvation wages that currently exist, which the proposed national minimum wage legitimizes with its plan for poverty pay at 20 rands an hour and the 3,500 rands a month, which SAFTU has rejected with the contempt it deserves. Also, almost hidden away by the national minimum wage report is a discussion on the imposing ballots before calling strike action and on sustaining it. This will mean that there is a further erosion of worker rights, and especially the right of unions to decide on their own matters, and independent, open, and democratic of their own choosing, in line with their own traditions and practices. Promises of the national health insurance system have still to fully materialize, and the national to provincial health budget was chopped by 13% after inflation last year. Diabetes, cancer, and mental illness are increasing rapidly, and according to official statistics, that in 2015, 33,063 people died of tuberculosis, a historic disease of the poor, the largest cause of death in South Africa. However, the real figures are actually much higher because in many cases, the cause of death is not reported, but the healthcare system is unprepared either to prevent or to provide treatment. Initially, the President, Jacob Zuma, was heralded for putting an end to the AIDS denialism of the former President Thabo Mbeki, but progress on AIDS has slowed down, and we risk now losing that ground. The South African National AIDS Council estimates that 283 young women are infected with HIV every day, and the epidemic continues to cause up to 300,000 up to 300 deaths a day, most as a result of tuberculosis. South Africa has the most corrupt and worst managed education system in Africa. Of every 100 children who enter the education system at grade 0, only 50 complete matric, and of these, only 14 qualify for tertiary education. Though the matric pass rate stood at 72% in 2016, this reflects only the performance of learners who managed to stay in school for 12 years and obscures how many dropped out along the way. Of the grade 2 class enrollment, only 668,612 students made it to the 2016 matric final exams, a massive dropout rate of 44.8%. Free education at all levels is still a dream for most young South Africans. Youth unemployment has led to the epidemic of despair and indignity, dehumanizing, which has led to a growing substance abuse epidemic, crime and violence between young men, and violence by men against girls and women. Shockingly, the suicide rate for children aged between 10 and 14 years has more than doubled over the last 15 years. In 2009, there were 18 deaths by suicide per day in 2009. Young men are 5 times more likely to commit suicide than women. About 10 million hectares of land have been redistributed since 1994, but between 70 to 90% of the projects, including land restitution projects, have failed. Most of the land remains in white hands, and the overwhelming majority of Black South Africans own virtually no property. On human settlements and basic services, since the 2014 elections, only 331,108 housing units have been built, whilst the medium-term target was 745,000 units. Poor communities are in revolt in more and more angry and frequently violent protests. SAFTU's response to this worsening crisis is as follows. 1, we will convene a meeting with our lawyers to reflect on the NEDLAC attempts to deny us of our constitutionally guaranteed right to protest against this economic carnage. NEDLAC has refused to grant us the right to protest, notwithstanding that we submitted a Section 77 notice demanding a debate on all of this unfolding crisis. The public will recall that SAFTU, even before it existed through its affiliates, submitted a Section 77 notice in December of 2016. We will submit another Section 77 notice over the demands of the National Congress that seek to address and challenge the totality of the status quo. At the center of dismantling the status quo is the creation of a new economic growth path centered on creation of jobs through industrialization of the economy, using the mineral wealth as a lever to build secondary industry and redistribution of wealth to the historically marginalized majority. We shall be picketing at the NEDLAC annual summit to voice our rejection of the sellout slavery national minimum wage signed by big business, neoliberal government, and its sweetheart unions that have been captured. And that is coming on the 3rd of September this year. We are proceeding with our plans to hold a general strike before the end of this year, such that we will tackle all of the issues that we are putting up as the areas of crisis. We will convene a people's conference in December to talk about the real crisis facing South Africa today. Guided by our principles, we shall link up with the progressive civil society formations to combat the pillaging of our country by all factions of capital, but we shall position ourselves to take a lead in this battle so that we don't allow a situation where we could tail other agendas that may be hostile to the working class interest or give false hope, such as replacing one capitalist class butcher with another one. The meeting was also informed that NUMSA has signed an agreement with the engineering employers, but was alarmed at an earlier attempt by some employers' organizations to demand cuts in wages for a new worker so as to allow a reduction of the current national minimum wage in the engineering and metal industry from 40 rands to 20 rand an hour. This is happening precisely because the employers are increasingly taking the agreement that was reached and signed by the sweetheart federations in NEDLAC as a model that must be rammed down the throats of workers across the economy. They attempted to slash entry-level salary by 50%, which would have affected mostly young workers entering this sector, by offering them only 20 rand an hour when others are earning twice as much. The employers' demand for workers to accept a downward variation of the basic conditions of workers will create a two-tier labor market system of equal work for unequal pay. And even if they have backed down for the moment, it is a grave warning of the strategy employers are likely to adopt in other sectors and in the future. It is a life or death struggle for workers. We will be meeting the leadership of SAPU to evaluate the ongoing 10-111 strike, including to consider more practical steps to be taken in support of the legitimate demands of these workers. We have noted, though we are not surprised, that the current ANC or the previous ANC policy conference and ANC Congress failed dismally to give any hope towards taking forward the struggle of workers. It was agreed that we should set up a task team to discuss international issues, including Swaziland, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Brazil, Workers' Party, and all of that. It must be analyzed. We must analyze the emergence of the right-wing, racist, and fascist parties across the globe, the decline of the traditional social democratic parties whose policies have become largely identical to those of the right-wing parties, with the important exception of Jeremy Corbyn, whose success in the United Kingdom has proved that radical left policies remain popular with the workers and the poor everywhere in the world. Thank you very much.